Hello and welcome to the Tampering Podcast, part of the Athletic NBA Show Network. I'm Sam Amick, NBA national writer at The Athletic, here in a 1v1 pod with Mr. Anthony Slater, my playoff cohort. Haven't seen in a minute with the Warriors bowing out, but we are forging on. Recency bias is real, Slater, but where does this kind of stand for you when it comes to just the uniqueness of this series when you've got the sweep on the other side and the way that Denver made quick work of the Lakers. And then you've got the, presumed sweep in the East. And we thought we all were going to be, just waiting for a week plus for the finals matchup. And the Celtics come roaring back on the edge of making history. Can't get that job done and just absolutely blank the bed, if you will, in game 7 and lose big. But the contrast there makes for a pretty kind of janky finals rhythm, if you will. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure there's like a perfect doppelganger of a series, right? That I can remember. I mean, I think we all try to remember our past. The series I understand from an in-depth level most are the ones I've covered over the years. And the one that somewhat feels a little reminiscent to me was, remember the young Thunder going down 2-0 to that great Spurs team, right? They go to San Antonio, lose 2 straight, and you felt like they're overwhelmed, not their time. And then they rattle off 4 straight. I mean, that's one of the series that felt like in the middle of it completely flipped. But that's obviously not the same because you went 3 on one side, 3 on the other. And then the team that won the first 3 won after a back-breaking game 6 and lost. You think they got to go on the road. And if we're going back to series I've covered as I guess reference points, that game 6 that they lost, obviously with the Derek White tip in at the buzzer, from a just emotional standpoint, felt a little bit like when the Thunder lost game 6 to the Warriors, right? They had a chance to close at home, beat the favorite, the 73-win Warriors. Klay Thompson, throws daggers in their heart in the fourth quarter. And you were at the arena that night in Oklahoma City. When you're leaving there and you're making the flight back to the Bay Area, no part of you's thinking like the Thunder's going to recover here and win game 7, right? It just felt over. And it proved to be over. Steph Curry goes, has a good game 7, Warriors go on to the finals. I don't know. I mean, I'm not covering this series, and I know you're not on the ground covering the series. You covered the West Finals, but I didn't think the Heat were going to be able to recover from this. And they did, not only to sneak one out, they blew out the Celtics.
They blew out the Celtics. I mean, listen, there's a lot of layers to it. Like always, the Celtics offense, obviously hat tip and give your flowers to the Heat defense, but the Celtics offense is tough to watch. It's the same problem they've had for so many years. There have been times when they find that ball movement without the conventional point guard and they find a way to maximize the Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown combo with the pieces around them. They lost that here. They're 0 for 10 from 3 in the first quarter. I actually chuckled when Shaq post-game talked about how if his team was 0 for 10 in the first quarter from 3, that he'd be, talking to every one of his teammates saying, if you shoot another 3, I'm going to punch you in the face. Now that's hyperbole, but there is truth in what he said, which is that the Celtics continue to live and die by the 3 late in the series, like they had early, and they had gotten away from that in the middle. But it was a weird one. And, I do want to get your opinion because this is fresh and topical on East Conference Finals MVP. Like you said, I'm not covering it up close. Certainly watched every minute of the action. I can imagine being a voter, and I have not seen the individualized voting just yet. In fact,
I'll pull 5-4 Jimmy Butler.
It was 5-4. Let me get it then. I got to see who went what direction.
Oh, Bottom line, you're going to call out voters.
I mean, it's all right. We're not calling them out. Both guys are a good vote. I just think, I voted like the West Finals was easy, for me anyway. There was like a mild temptation to give Jamal Murray his love, but Nikola Jokic was fantastic. You had to vote Jokic. That was an easy call. Jimmy Butler is, the heart of the Heat. And it's one of those things where even if the stats don't, kind of, add up when it comes to comparing Jimmy to Caleb Martin, then you got to look at the Heat and say, who are we kidding? Who would, where would they be without Jimmy? He shows out in game 7, has a good game. Caleb has an even better game, 11 of 16 from the field, 10 boards, 3 assists, plus 14, 26 points. Jimmy had 28 points, 7 boards, 6 assists, and plus 11 was 12 of 28. If you look at the series, again, just diving into the numbers a little bit, my God, I mean, Caleb shoots 58.3% overall, 46.2 from three on high volume, 6.5 threes per game, and then gives you 5.8 assists as well. Jimmy, 24.2 points, so 6 more points a game, but his percentages, efficiency way down, 41.7 overall, 31.3 from three, and 84.5 from the line. So not a bad pick there. I am going to look the votes up here in a second, but how did you see that?
I just don't know why we have West Finals, East Finals MVPs all of a sudden. I mean, it's just,
You just got to Euro step the whole question, huh?
well, I don't know. I mean, I just the Heat are only there. They're only in this position. They're only where they are because of what Jimmy Butler has been in the playoffs. I guess
Right.
you're not supposed. I mean, we're making all these different rules now, and now because we have this East Finals MVP. You're only supposed to worry about games 1 through 7 of this series. Do we care what Jimmy Butler did earlier in this playoffs? Is it an East playoffs MVP?
No,
Does
it's
that
just this series. Just this series.
which like why? I just like this award.
All right, fine. But for the sake of
Okay.
discussion,
All
you
right.
know,
All right. No. Okay. So last West Finals, it was 4-1 Warriors over Mavericks. Andrew Wiggins was excellent defending Luka Doncic in that series. You covered it. You remember, and scored well. You remember that poster dunk he had on Luka. You could make an argument he could have been the West Finals MVP over Steph Curry, but the vote went to Steph Curry because it was like they're here because of Steph Curry. They are who they are because of Steph Curry. Wiggins, maybe from a point total perspective on any given night, could be the same, but everything operates because of Steph Curry. That is the orbit of the entire franchise. He's the obvious MVP of this team. He's the MVP of this series. He wins MVP. I feel similarly with Jimmy Butler. Caleb Martin had an excellent series. The way he defended on the wing, in a lot of ways, outplayed Jaylen Brown. You could say, who's supposed to be like an All NBA guy on the other side. Scored it, shot it well, made a lot of money. They were even referencing that on the broadcast, right? Like cha-ching for Caleb Martin.
yep.
But Jimmy Butler is the Heat. They won this series because of who he has transformed them into. So I personally would have voted Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. That breakdown, and again, there's no shade here, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the curtain back and share all of the votes. Our Joe Barden, fellow national writer, voted for Caleb Barden. Gary Washburn of the Boston Globe, also Caleb Martin. John Schumann, NBA.com, Caleb Martin. Tim Reynolds of the AP, Caleb Martin. That's the four. And then Tim Bontemps of ESPN, Doris Burke, ESPN, Reggie Miller, TNT. These are all Jimmy Butler, Ben Rohrbach, Yahoo Sports, and Ira Winderman, longtime Heat beat writer for the Sun Sentinel, Jimmy Butler. So, tight race there. Listen, the Heat are, this is my last thought on that front, and I would love to kind of flip it over to the Celtics a little bit. The one memory that admittedly is just kind of, I'm subjective because I lived it, that I just kept coming back during this Heat run. I think we might have hit on this in an earlier pod, but was the whole Jimmy Butler telling me when they were 2-5 that they were going to win the effing championship. Like that spirit back then when he was in Sacramento in that visitor locker room, and I looked at him like he was crazy because he was talking wild when they were down, 2-5 and had a bad start to the year. I certainly didn't see it. They looked really thin. They go on to lose Tyler Hero and be even more thin over the course of time. This is to me, I'm just stream of consciousness here. Reminds me as far as like a team kind of, hitting above its weight. The Sixers with Allen Iverson had this kind of spirit, but that's, probably the best comparison I can think of. They're going to be massive underdogs in this finals against the Nuggets, but give them their love. I mean, the fact that they're here is crazy.
Yeah, Sixers were the 1 seed that year. They were definitely overmatched in the finals. And that's kind of how they're remembered, right? As the little plucky underdog. But like they were the best defensive team in the Eastern Conference. They were the 1 seed that year. And that's what's crazy about this Heat team. I mean, I know other people have referenced it, but they not only lose the first play-in game to Atlanta, but they're trailing in the second half to Chicago. Their season nearly ends at the hands of the Chicago Bulls in a play-in.
Right.
And it turns into this, which doesn't have really a historical comparison. The Knicks back in that lockout year, I think at 99, maybe there's an
99,
eight
yeah.
seed.
So the Knicks in 99 were the eighth seed. They lose to the Spurs in 5 in 99. This is, so the Heat have essentially, they're now neck and neck with that Knicks team as making
You want
history.
to know the recent one that I remember that was surprising was actually the Heat in the bubble. They were a 5 seed, and like,
Sure.
I mean, obviously because Jimmy Butler's the leader, and like that's the most obvious comparison of a recent finalist. How about also 2011, the Mavericks? They were a 3 seed, but I remember going in the playoffs, like a lot of people were picking the Blazers to beat them in the first round. I think it was the Blazers. And they really surprised a lot of people and continued to move on and then won the title.
Well, and again, similar because they also won the title. If the Heat are looking for motivation, there's that legendary Rockets team in 95. They beat the Magic. They sweep the Magic. They were a 6 seed that year. So this is not what we thought, because it's not just any 8 seed. This is an Eastern Conference that had Milwaukee, that had Philly, that had Boston. These were the Titans of the league.
But yeah, they have a chance if they won the title to go through Milwaukee, the 1 seed, Boston, the 2 seed, and then Denver, the 1 seed in the West. I mean, that would
Right.
be an insane path. And
Right.
also, I know you were setting it up a little bit like this overmatched, tired Heat team going into the finals, which I think is a fair way to look at it. But also, like, how overmatched did you think the Heat were against the Bucks? How overmatched did
Yeah.
you think the Heat
Yeah.
were against the Celtics? Like,
Yeah.
should they be underrated going into these finals?
Probably not. Probably not at all. You know what I mean? Like there's something about, it's cliche. I'm repeating myself from last week that heat culture is become something that makes people roll their eyes, but they've been getting it done and it's fun to watch.
Today's show is brought to you by Philo. Visit philo.tv and use the promo code NBA Show to get 50% off your first month. There's nothing better than unwinding, watching a little TV every now and then. But the hassle of finding what to watch, and to be fair, the cost of cable just doesn't make it worth it. That's why I completely cut the cord. And if you love TV, Philo is your solution. Philo has shows, movies, and live TV for just $25 a month. No contracts, no commitments, no hassle, just a better way to watch TV. Philo also has unlimited DVR for 1 year, so you can save all those shows that you're probably never going to get around to watching. It also allows multiple profiles and multiple streams, so everyone in the house can have their own saved shows and up to 3 streams at the same time. And if you can't get enough TV, there's no better way to watch, because Philo has over 70 channels, including BET, VH1, AMC, and Vice. If you're still not convinced, try it yourself with a free 7-day trial. Sign up today at philo.tv. That's philo.tv, and use promo code NBA Show to get 50% off your first month.
Before we spin it to Heat Nuggets, can we get a few of your thoughts on the Celtics? Because you were there a year ago in Boston when they were up in those finals and they were looking like they were on their way to winning a title and finally but like maximizing the Brown and Tatum era.
Winning a title. I mean, they were going to win a title. Should have won a title.
Right. And now, so here Jaylen Brown is on the verge of a possible free agency type decisions, awaiting to see if he gets a supermax extension from the Celtics. Years long rumblings about whether or not he wants to continue in Boston, and the idea that maybe if they did not win the whole thing, that he would be ready to go be his own man somewhere else. That has been the consistent intel when it comes to Jaylen. I don't think this is it for him in Boston, because I think he probably does get that supermax that keeps him around. But my goodness, you talk about a tough finale. 8 of 23 from the field, 1 of 9 from 3, 19 points, minus 17, 8 boards, 5 assists. Tatum not much better, 5 of 13 overall. Combined, 2 of 13 from 3 between those two guys. Just a terrible, terrible finish for that tandem.
The Boston Garden is maybe the best playoff environment I've been in during those finals last year. I mean, it's right up there in like the pantheon of these like roaring buildings I think we've both been in, right? Oklahoma City, old school Oracle, San Antonio back in the day, Utah when it's at its fiercest, Memphis, a good playoff atmosphere. Boston, as loud, as raucous as you would think, tough to win a road game in as any. How many big road wins have been taken from them in the last few playoffs. People have the record out there, but I think they're like under 500 at home in like the last two
Yeah,
playoffs and
they're
really
around
good on the road.
500.
But
Yeah, it's the elimination game thing had been what had kept them afloat. That obviously didn't bear out today. But you're right; they haven't been great at home. And I do wonder, Vinny Goodwill, our friend and colleague from Yahoo Sports, had tweeted after the game. This kind of I thought resonated that when the Celtics were down 3-0, we in the media had questions about Joe Mazzulla because they fell in Game 7. He said we have questions about Jaylen Brown. And I do think from a spotlight standpoint, it is interesting, and it's probably not that binary, but it is interesting how it shifts. Joe post game, he doesn't really, and he's young, I get it. He doesn't help himself with the optics of some of his media stuff. He was asked post game if they needed to be less reliant on threes and gave a fairly terse no, as if that was an absurd, proposition. And he was obviously just frustrated, not in a great headspace to be breaking everything down. But when I guess when it comes to the old fashioned blame game, how do you see the breakdown for Boston?
yeah, I mean, I think that you saw it in the finals last year. Tatum and Brown are not crisp ball handlers. And I think Tatum in the last 3 games of the finals last year, all 3 losses, right? They're up 2-1. They lose the final 3. I think he had 15 turnovers combined in the last 3 games. He went 6 of 18 in the game 6. And he was kind of the GOAT. Jaylen Brown had a really good finals last year. Remember, like really tough for them to cover.
Oh,
They
yeah.
had to like switch Draymond onto him. But even through that, I think part of the way that the Warriors beat the Celtics was really attacking the dribble and attacking with pressure Brown and Tatum, because those are their 2 lead scorers, lead playmakers, guys you want the ball in their hands, and they're sloppy. They turn the ball over a bunch. We see it a bunch with Tatum and Brown. What'd you say, 8 turnovers tonight? Like just kind of dribbling it away at key
Yeah, no, I
moments.
didn't say it, but that's certainly worth mentioning. 8 turnovers, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge.
And by the way, super producer Andrew Schlecht adding in that they're Celtics 5-6 at home in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's great. That's almost made the
6-6, 6-6.
So, I'm not in the camp of like, oh, something is fatally wrong. You have to break up Tatum and Brown. I still kind of think they were the most talented roster. If they got through, I might have picked them against the Nuggets. Although it would have been really tough because they went 7, Nuggets are resting. But I think they're, very well built. But I do think that one of their flaws is like a lack of like kind of the ball control point guard. Maybe this Malcolm Brogdon injury, if he doesn't have it, maybe they advance. I don't know. I thought that was a great trade in the offseason. And, he won 6th man of the year, so it kind of worked. He was just hurt at the wrong time. But I wouldn't like they have flaws in their game that maybe that means they don't ever win a title, but I don't think they're disqualified. Like we should think they can never win a title together, because if Steph Curry doesn't go nuclear in game 4 last year and have this historic performance, they win the NBA championship last year. So I think they're right on the doorstep, and like maybe make some tweaks around the edges, but I'd keep the core together.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And briefly to clean up those numbers from before that Andrew shared. So it was 5-6 this year, 6-6 last year. So, around 500 for the 2 years. And I think my only thing on the Celtics front that we've seen time and again is just the kind of the scar tissue that gets built up when it comes to falling short. And there's that fine line between, kind of going the old, the Michael Jordan Bulls and how they had to get through the Pistons and had to fight through, and then they eventually break through. That's a progression that we've seen. With Boston, Jaylen has been there since 2016, I believe. Jason the year after. That's when you just start looking at it and wondering if they want to remain together. And I'm curious because you do hear a lot of stuff about where Jalen's head is at. So we'll see what happens with Boston.
Well, by the way, they both made All NBA this year. They're both Supermax eligible. I mean, that's particularly a conversation with Jaylen Brown, right? Just the expensiveness of
that's the thing, though. I mean, I know we can't get too caught up in one game, but if you're Wick Grousbeck and that ownership group, you sure wish that you weren't handing Jaylen Brown a Supermax on the heels of an 8 turnover dud in Game 7 of the East Finals. And that's where, I've talked to people within the league recently about the holistic question of, is Jaylen Brown a supermax player? And you get differing opinions, and that's what we're going to have to wait and see how Boston sees it.
Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. Visit linkedin.com/NBA show 23 for more information. Are you struggling to close deals? Cold outreach is wasting the time of both the buyer and the seller at every stage, especially when the sellers are using shallow and outdated data. Your organization can overcome these challenges with technology that translates comprehensive, high-quality buyer data into real-time insights. These deeper insights empower sales reps and teams to adopt the habits of top performers, which leads to better outcomes, like more pipeline, higher win rates, and larger deals. We call this deep sales, and we've built the first deep sales platform with the next generation of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day free trial at linkedin.com/NBA show 23. That is linkedin.com/NBA show 23 for a 60-day free trial. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar today. Just go to linkedin.com/NBA show 23 and get started.
How do you see the series? We got the Nuggets have been, I keep laughing because I look at my email and it's got, kudos to the NBA. They've continued to try to provide Denver Nuggets media access during this downtime and this period of kind of delay. And so it's like combination of Zoom links and in-person press conferences where, okay, today it's Michael Malone talking and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Aaron Gordon and all these different guys. They've just been spinning their wheels media-wise, trying to talk about a hypothetical matchup and reflect on their journey a little bit. But now they know who they're playing, and it's a Heat team that, again, regardless of what Jimmy and company have done to get here, if you're a Nuggets team that is trying to win the franchise's first championship, this is about as good an opponent as you're going to find.
Yes.
It's just all there is to it. So you could argue there's some pressure on them, and I think that's true. They have home court. They've been playing phenomenally at home. Nikola Jokic has been the best player in the playoffs. Matchup-wise, let's start there. How do you see it? It's going to be Jokic versus Bam Adebayo, who spends a lot of time, with good reason, feeling as if he does not get enough respect for being, he thinks he's the best defender in the NBA. That is how he wakes up in the morning, guards 5 positions, and is a force on that end. So that I think is a fascinating matchup. To me, it starts there and we can build it out from there. But how do you see it?
Yeah, he gets the big stage. I remember he was kind of a disappointment in the finals in the bubble.
Yep.
And he had a really good East Finals. And correct me if I'm wrong. Remember, didn't he enter the finals a little hobbled?
I gotta look that up.
I seem to remember he was banged up. Goran Dragic, who was really big for the Heat in the bubble, like East playoffs, had like plantar fasciitis or something with his foot. I just remember the Heat. By the time the Heat got there, they were no match really for the Lakers physically. But Bam's healthy this time around. I didn't think he had a particularly good East Finals. I do think
Bam missed game 2. Sorry to interrupt. Goran missed game 2 with left shoulder injury for Bam, and Goran was a left plantar fascia. So you're right. Yeah, they
were banged up. Bam has been, I think, a disappointment offensively. Really not just these playoffs, like this season. He just, he doesn't have a full, really like kind of like devastating number 2 score type package. But I think he's what would you say, a top 10 defender in the league? Probably. The versatility is what makes him so good, right? The fact that he can switch 1 through 5, as you mentioned, he can get out on the perimeter. He can do a lot of things. This will test him as like a one-on-one guy,
right,
against a guy that's bigger than him. I don't know exactly the size difference, but Jokic
6'9"
has
Bam is 6'9", 255. Jokic is we don't know the weight. I don't know if they're claiming, although he's slimmed down quite a bit.
Jokic is bigger than him, right?
Yeah, he's bigger.
So, this will test Bam in that sense. Like the Heat seem a little thin beyond Bam. I mean, are we going to see old school Kevin Love down there, like kind of trying to bang a little bit? I mean, the Heat's rotation really shifted during this series, right? I mean, like suddenly you're seeing Haywood Highsmith, Kevin Love's getting buried, Kyle Lowry's like, seeing his minutes kind of minimized a little bit more, although he was pretty good in Game 7. You know, they're going to need a Caleb Martin type series that again, times two. Gabe Vincent's been really good. They're going to need random contributions from random places. But they've got it to this point. So,
I mean, they have, but you kind of alluded to it there. If I'm Eric Spoelstra, who you could argue is the absolute coaching wizard of these playoffs, I'm losing a little sleep over my roster in this matchup, because if we saw that Lakers series, that the Lakers defense was at its best when, I don't care if it's Rui Hachimura, Vanderbilt, whoever, put somebody else on Jokic, and Anthony Davis could be help side free safety defender, and that is what made life tough on Jokic. The problem for the Heat is that guy does not exist. Bam has led them in these playoffs on the glass. To give you context, 9.2 boards so far per game for Bam. In terms of bigs, I mean, Jimmy Butler's second in rebounding on the Heat in the playoffs. Kevin Love third. Like, they do not have any sort of size and length. You mentioned Haywood, like that is going to help, and I think that's an issue in a pretty major way, because Jokic is going to have that size advantage you mentioned earlier over Bam, and all of those little half hooks, all those little twisty shimmies, all the stuff he can do. If you are letting him see the rim consistently, like he probably will be able to over Bam, I think that's pretty scary.
Yeah. But could have said the same about Giannis against the Heat. I mean, it's difficult. Like, it's hard if we just like sit here and like X's and O's it to construct like why the Heat should win this series. But game one might happen and Jimmy Butler's just like got a gritty 32 points, and Gabe Vincent goes 5 of 9 from 3, and they've got a couple rip steals on Jokic, and Jokic is showing a little frustration, and Aaron Gordon maybe has like a disappearing game 1, and like Jamal Murray has a 5 of 19 type game, and the Heat steal game 1 in Denver, right? Like, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but like that's the type of script that I feel like needs to happen for the Heat. And like, sure, it might. Like, I'm kind of done doubting them in a sense.
And listen, to your point, they got through Philly last year in the playoffs in the second round. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as if they haven't faced an elite all-time type of big before.
This is where Spoelstra matters, right? It's going to be swarming. It's going to be scheme. It's going to be, different help.
Yeah.
Like the stuff
I mean,
that
they had
NBA
PJ Tucker
insiders,
last time. I mean, PJ Tucker would come in handy.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And maybe look, you might be right in game 1, game 2, like, hey, look, they just have no answer. But they're gonna do some quirky scheme stuff, I bet, that at least makes it interesting.
Right.
Today's show is brought to you by Front Door. Download the Front Door app and get a free video chat. We all have that long, incredibly nagging home to-do list that we keep putting off. It's full of annoying stuff that just needs to be fixed. A dripping dishwasher, hole in the drywall, or maybe your dryer is not actually drying your clothes. Well, wouldn't it feel great to get all that done? Well, now you can, and it's easier than ever. Introducing Front Door, the all-new one-stop home repair and maintenance app. Front Door lets you video chat with experts in real time so you can diagnose the problem faster. Sometimes you can fix it yourself on the video chat, or Front Door will send you a list of vetted and trusted pros to come out and help solve the problem. With a Front Door membership, it's easy to cross things off your home to-do list and enjoy that feeling of done. Download the app now and get a free video chat with an expert to start solving your problems today.
All right, sir. Good stuff. I know we're all kind of focused on the finals. Anything else about the league?
Yeah, I mean, let's pivot to 2 things. I'd say the coach, Nick Nurse is now the Sixers coach. That's pretty vital. Adrian Griffin got the Bucks job, And then, I mean, we can end if you want on this backside. I mean, Bob Myers is doing a press conference at noon on Tuesday. We'll see which way that goes, but obviously there's been a kind of lean that Bob Myers might step away from the Warriors, which would be a pretty big bombshell across the league. So there's a lot of, leading into what will be transaction season. There is a lot of stuff going on with the other teams.
The Nurse one I'll hit on real quick. It's interesting because we got the looming question of whether or not James Harden's going to return. And you have the connective tissue between Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey from their Houston days. Nick, of course, coached for the Rio Grande Valley Vipers, and for years was seen as the heir apparent in Houston. And then, that just didn't end up happening. And that's essentially around the time that Kevin McHale had the job, and then JB Bickerstaff and Mike D'Antoni. And Nick, had a long, successful championship tenure in Toronto. The most important question to me, if the Sixers, and I do think they feel this way, believe that James Harden should still be part of their program going forward, is how does James see Nick Nurse? So that's the number one question about that situation. In the Milwaukee scenario, it's been reported by multiple outlets, including our Shams Charania at The Athletic, that Giannis Antetokounmpo had certainly let his voice be heard on that hire and was behind it. And so, that seems like a very solid hire and the type of thing that we'll see how those Bucks look different. Mike Budenholzer had an incredibly unique system defensively, some offensive flaws that were rightfully nitpicked throughout the years, but, some pretty damn successful basketball. And obviously that title a couple of years ago. So we'll see how Adrian fits in. With Bob, the top of mind thing for me is just, again, week by week, I got to get your pulse on it. How do you feel about where this is going, what that press conference might entail?
Yeah. This is technically his exit interview, which, Steve Kerr did it. I think they lost on a Friday, Saturday. Gee, it feels so long ago at this point. But Steve Kerr did his exit interview within 48 hours. Bob Myers still has not. A couple weeks later, there was the combine. There was, from the Warriors side, hey, there's some scheduling reasons why he can't. But it seemed also, a little bit obvious that part of the reason Bob had not talked yet is because Bob had not made an official decision yet. He was taking some time away to, I'm sure, have important conversations he needed to tie up some loose ends and have a clear mind before he decided if he was staying with the Warriors or not. And the fact that he is officially having this press conference on a Tuesday, I would be surprised if he goes up on stage and it's like, I still haven't made this decision, but, pepper me with questions that I cannot answer at this point. Sure. I'd expect you're probably going to know, very soon if Bob Myers is still leading the Warriors or not. My sense and the reporting we've had over the last couple of weeks, and really, we can go back to mid-season, right, when we did the big Bob Myers story then, that there was kind of a lean and a tug from Bob Myers internally to kind of depart from the job that he's held for so long and done so successfully for various reasons. I mean, we've reported some of the money stuff, the contract stuff that's in play, but also, obviously, just a burnout possibility here and just, family, all that's mixed into it. So my sense, my expectation at this point is I think Bob Myers might leave the Warriors tomorrow. And maybe people are waking up and hearing this, and there has been some type of conversations over the last week, with Steph Curry, with other major power players involved that have lured Bob Myers back into the building. The Warriors, Joe Lacob, and the ownership and front office group wants Bob Myers back. But so it's always possible, but my sense is he's probably not going to be back. And that's pretty big.
That is. No question. All right, that's a heck of a cliffhanger. So we'll see what comes from that presser. And my parting thoughts, Mr. Slater, this is in the category of maybe hopefully at least a couple dozen people find this interesting and mildly entertaining. The first world problems of our industry and our career. This is how my evening was spent. And I was definitely not alone at The Athletic. When you are lucky enough to have a job where they are willing to send you to the NBA finals, I have never had a scenario like this one where you had to wait till game 7 of, one of the conference finals to be over to figure out which city you're going to, because it was either going to be games 1 and 2 in Denver or games 1-2 in Boston. And so here I was, and a lot of us were, with our dual track itineraries, hotels in both cities, flights to both cities reserved, ready to roll, but also having to make sure that if you need to cancel, you're going to have to cancel one of them, that you can get fully refunded, and you're having to call hotels and negotiate with front desk folks to try to get them to listen to their better angels and help you out a little bit. So we got there. We know where we're going. It's Denver for 1 and 2, Miami 3 and 4, and we'll see if this thing will be a series. It should be fun, and I look forward to talking about it.
Sam's just hype. He's getting like a little Miami in early June. That's a nice final city to get. I've never got Miami.
See, I'm not even hype about that yet, brother. What I'm hype about, as we sit here again, full transparency, 9:10 p.m. Pacific time. If it was Boston, I was gonna be waking up at ODark 30 about 4 a.m. to take a 6 a.m. flight to Boston. So the evening got a little easier with the revelation that I was headed to Denver first, a little bit closer for this guy who lives in Northern California. So that 10:55 a.m. flight to Denver is suddenly looking very manageable. And like you said, from there, I enjoyed Denver. We'll do our thing out there, try to kick butt and provide fantastic coverage with our whole staff, and then we'll head off to South Beach and enjoy the sunshine.
All right, I'm gonna be reading.
All right, brother. Be good. Appreciate you. Talk to everybody next week.